Welcome to the second episode in a Legendarium series about the Roman apocalypse. In part 2, Coming of the Huns, we will talk about Attila's invasion of the East and West Roman empires. His invasion of the West was briefly stopped at the Battle of the Catalaunian plains, but he would avenge this defeat with an invasion of Italy. While Emperor Valentinian amused himself in Ravenna and Flavius Aetius rebuilt West Roman power in Gaul, the Huns ravaged the East. Seeking more wealth and power, Attila and Bleda, brother warlords, led the Huns across the Danube River in 440 AD against the East Roman Empire. Whether by coincidence or design, this invasion coincided with the Vandals' siege of Carthage in North Africa. Roman troops that had been dispatched to stop the fall of Carthage had to be recalled by Emperor Theodosius to defend Constantinople from the Huns. As a result, Carthage and Africa would be lost to the Vandals. While in the Balkan Peninsula, Attila learned the art of siege warfare. While Hunnic horsemen could easily slaughter Roman armies in the field, Hunnic horse archers died easily when charging stone walls. When the brother warlords approached the fortress city of Niscus, their initial assault proved to be a bloody failure. Dozens of horse archers lay slaughtered before the gates, mocked by jeering Romans. So Attila and Bleda chopped down a tree, covered it with basketry and willow reeds to protect it from fire, and mounted the device with a metal cap. With this improvised battering ram, they knocked down the gates of Niscus. When the Huns stormed in, they slaughtered thousands of men, women, and children. As Niscus served as an armory for the region, the Huns also plundered hundreds of swords, iron ingots, and bows. After the Huns left, they hurled burning brands into the buildings and left the fortress city a tower of flame. When Roman travelers arrived at the city years later, they found charred bones scattered in the streets and skulls lining the riverbanks. The Huns came again in 442 and 447. Around 445, Attila's brother Bleda went hunting and never came back. Though they did everything together, the monstrous Attila could no longer endure sharing power and murdered the man with whom he shared his life. After repeated raids, the East Romans grew so terrified of Attila's Huns that they agreed to pay him simply to stay away. Attila agreed to end further raids on the Eastern Empire in exchange for an immense ransom, 6,000 pounds of gold each year. The East Romans also turned over all of the Hun deserters who fled Attila for Constantinople during the wars. Attila had them impaled on wooden stakes, then left to die over hours, if not days. The Eastern Empire only kept up the payments for a few years before they stopped. Though a fourth invasion seemed obvious, Attila understood that the East was now exhausted and had little left to plunder. So he launched an invasion of the relatively untouched West Roman Empire and became a whirlwind that would strip Europe bare. Attila's Huns cut a path of destruction through Gaul, eventually laying siege to the city of Orleans. They sacked, burned, and looted every structure that they came upon and undid decades of Aetius's work rebuilding Roman rule in Gaul. King Childeric of the Franks moved south towards Orleans, while Aetius, stationed in southern Gaul, hurried north. As he traveled, Aetius hastily recruited all the Germanic tribes he could and chose his ground in a river valley. Rather than fight in terrain unfavorable to cavalry, Attila fell back. The battle that followed ranks as one of the most famous in European history, but relatively little is known about it. It may have been fought closer to the city of Troy than Chalon, as previously thought. Even the numbers are unknown, though most scholars believe that the two sides had a combined total of 40,000 men. Attila's hordes had more horsemen than infantry, with an elite group of cavalry archers at their core. On the other hand, the Romano-Frank army focused on infantry who fought in a shield wall. Battle began on June 20th, 451 AD, at the Montau Ridge south of Troy. Visigoth mercenaries serving Flavius Aetius chased the Huns from the ridge easily. Aetius used the ridge to protect his right flank and a forest to protect his left as he formed up against the Hunnic typhoon. Childeric and his Franks formed a shield wall on the Roman left, alongside Burgundians and Saxons. Ironically, other Frankish nations who lived east of the Rhine and found it wise to ally with Attila fought on the Huns' right flank. While the Roman center collapsed under a wave of Hunnic arrows, the Franks on the flank held. Hun arrows turned their round wooden shields into porcupines, but the lines held. Next, the Franks faced an onslaught of Ostrogothic cavalry from Attila's army. Light horsemen galloped up to the Frankish shield wall, pounding the defense with spears. Keeping their overlapping shields tight, the Franks endured a terrible pounding. Their line pressed together so tight that a man killed in battle could not fall. Whenever an opening presented, they thrust at Ostrogothic horses with swords and spears. Steaming gouts of blood from men and horses sprayed on faces and shields as the battle continued. Attila's men died in appalling numbers. Because of the courageous Frankish stand, Attila and his Visigothic allies regrouped and drove Attila back. Childeric longed to hound Attila all the way to the Rhine River and ensure the Huns never returned, yet Aetius refused Childeric permission to hunt the Hun. Most likely, Aetius saw the Huns as a counterbalance to keep the Franks from growing too strong, which likely only added to Childeric's dismay. So Aetius let Attila escape. Indeed, later Frankish chroniclers heaped scorn upon Aetius, claiming that he only allowed Attila to escape in exchange for a bribe. Not surprisingly, King Childeric chose to sit out the next Hunnic invasion in 452 AD. Attila saw his defeat at the Catalaunian plains as an insult that had to be avenged with the greatest brutality possible. So in this next invasion, Attila ravaged much of northern Italy. Once more, entire villages vanished in gouts of flame. Swords and arrows made a harvest of souls. Aetius, lacking the numbers to confront Attila, instead shadowed him. He murdered Attila's raiding and foraging parties in the hopes of starving the main army. In the end, disease may have helped do the job for him. Attila appeared poised to take Rome for a time, yet he spared the Eternal City a second sacking after Pope Leo arrived with a party of priests and negotiated the Huns' retreat from Italy. Many Christians attributed the powerful, indeed miraculous aura of Pope Leo with the city's salvation. Yet Attila's army had grown sick from plague, which likely forced an end to this invasion. While Attila likely planned a third attack against the west, he died under mysterious circumstances in 453 AD. After yet another night of drunken revelry, Attila died of a massive nosebleed, likely caused by hemorrhaging of the liver, itself caused by severe alcoholism. Attila's empire would disintegrate within a matter of years as his sons fought for power. Meanwhile, Aetius himself appeared poised to become the next emperor of the West Roman Empire. At the head of a coalition of Romans and Romanized barbarians, he could have continued consolidating Roman rule in Italy and southern Gaul. Aetius even secured marriage between his daughter and the imperial family, a step aimed at securing a line of his own, not to mention a foothold in the imperial palace. While Aetius earned his laurels on the battlefield, the Emperor Valentinian grew ever more degenerate. He filled the court with sorcerers and astrologers. He drank wine at every feast and gambled recklessly. He even forced himself on other men's wives. Yet, as Aetius delivered a report to the emperor, Valentinian did one thing of consequence, unfortunately. While Aetius read off financial information from the report, Valentinian suddenly began flinging wild accusations at Aetius, claiming he betrayed Rome. Out of the fear that Aetius would replace him, Valentinian III stabbed him to death in the middle of the court. In doing so, he murdered the only man strong enough to defend Rome. Valentinian also destroyed himself in this desperate act. Earlier in his reign, Valentinian had forced himself on the wife of a Roman senator named Petronius Maximus. The angry aristocrat soon recruited some of Aetius's Visigoth mercenaries to avenge their master's death and his wife's honor. While Valentinian watched horse races, Petronius's men stabbed the emperor to death in the royal box. With Aetius dead, there was no military leader strong enough to defend Rome. With Valentinian dead, there was no legitimate emperor who could provide a basis for stable government, and that would open the gates of Rome to a new and terrible invasion, which we will talk about in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this installment of the Legendarium. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.